Welcome to Moonstone Poetry, Who Do You Love? And today we love Ntozoke Shange. Before we get started, my name is Deborah Powell Wright. Deborah Powell Wright. I want to thank Larry Robbins as well as Warren Longmire for inviting me here today. Warren is our usual host, but he thought that it would be more appropriate to have a colored girl to introduce this program today. So we're going to talk about Ntozoke Shange and share some poetry. Ntozoke, she who comes with her own things. Shange walks with the lions. So before we talk about, of course, for colored girls who have considered suicide when the rainbow is enough, and before we talk about her 3 pieces, another theater production, and those pieces are Spell Number 7, A Photograph, Lovers in Motion, Boogie Woogie Landscapes, and before we talk about her poetry collections, Nappy Edges, A Daughter's Geography, Riding the Moon in Texas, The Love Space Demands, and before we talk about her fiction, Sassafras, Cypress and Indigo, Betsy Brown, Lillian, Some Sing, Some Cry, I'd like to talk about her collection of essays, which I have here, 2001 collection of essays, Lost in Language and Sound, or How I Found My Way to the Arts. So this is going to kind of set the tone for our conversation today, ladies. First, I have to go back and introduce the people that we have here, right?
That's all right.
Pat McLean. Pat McLean is a performance poet. She is the founder of In the Company of Poets, which I have a pleasure of being a member of. And we have Miriam Harris, who is a member of Babel Poetry Collective, just having past served as its president, and now she's an alumnus of the group, correct? Okay, welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
So as I said, I would like to share from Lost in Language and Sound, or How I Found My Way to the Arts. And this is a collection of essays. So I'm going to read an excerpt from First Love. I always knew I liked poetry more than anything, more than boys, more than butterflies, more than fresh sheets on a hot St. Louis night. I'm not sure I like poetry more than dancing or Jackie Wilson or even sleeping on the second floor screen porch when even fresh, sweet, dried sheets were no match for the weight of the air on my sister's wandering limbs. My mother Eloise had benefited from what we then called elocution lessons, privately given in the home of a striking yet demure Southern woman once removed to the Bronx. There she mastered Whitman, Whittier, Whitley, Shakespeare, and Dunbar. This eclectic mix of word crafters were my lullabies, soothing rhymes, and demonstrations of slowly garnered memorization skills. This, I suspect, is where I began my love for poets. They served a purpose, even in a short but widely lived life of a small colored girl in East Trenton, where the houses and trees were as small as my arms reached to my mind, or later in the magnificence of a St. Louis dawn, I heralded the coming light with words. To get more to the point of why I am the kind of poet I am, I have to remind you that I have always been a performing poet. I believed from my Euro-American training that the Greeks were right. Poetry must be heard. I want to do that. I want to be a poet. Until I saw Amiri Baraki and the Spirit House Movers, I'd grown to love Leroy Jones because of the delicacy of preface to a 20-volume suicide note, but the music and cultural textures that the Spirit House Movers offered on 1960-something, or the lines, Ruby Dee weeps at the window, being what we all will be, sentimental, bitter, like love songs to a people, like a personal serenade from an absolute stranger who took my heart. That's when I knew I would say, I want to do that. Pat, when did you know?
Wow. Almost after hearing that excerpt. Actually, I kind of always loved writing poetry. Even as a child, my mom said I would write like little skits and little rounds, but I didn't really realize my love for it until I was about 17 or 18 years old. And my aunt, who was a teacher in the Philadelphia school system at the time, she would see how much I was into poetry. And at the time, most of the poets that I read were Caucasian poets. I would read Eugene Field, Edgar Allan Poe, Shakespeare. I loved all of those things, and I really didn't have a connection or have any contact with African American poets. And the only one that I really knew a lot about, I could say I knew a lot about, was Paul Laurence Dunbar. And so she introduced me to, first it was Sonia Sanchez, and then she would always bring me books, and she brought me Ntozoke, Shange, and well, the world just lit up for me, because I'm like, this is me. She talks and thinks like me, and it's a black woman saying what she wants to say and how she wants to say it. And reading those two young ladies and other poets as well made me know that this is what I want to do. This was going to be a major part of my life, and it has been ever since I was a teenager.
Okay, so, wonderful. And Miriam, how about you?
Well, I didn't start writing or loving poetry because someone had brought me poetry. The reality is that no one was around to sort of bring me poetry, and no one really knew what I needed as far as poetry, and nobody was concerned about the black girl or the poet. So I started writing when, in middle school, God, I was going head to head with my language arts teacher, and he had us doing some ridiculous assignment that we had to. It was definitely to fill time. It was not to enrich us at all. He had us doing some ridiculous assignment where we basically had to write to our parents what we had done wrong throughout the day. And everything was sort of centered on blame. All the curriculum was centered on blame. So I was like, I'm not taking that home to my grandmother. So I started writing really facetious, sarcastic, ridiculous things, because I'm like, there's no way I'm reading this. And he found it, and we had it out for each other until high school. But when he called my grandmother, I was certain I was going to get in trouble, but she got so happy that I had been writing the things that I had been writing, and she was like, you're talking about things. You're saying what's on your mind. And it wasn't until I got to college that I realized the importance of a black girl saying what's on her mind. I didn't get to read Ntozoke, Tony, Alice, any of those until I got to college, and I realized that there are so many other little black girls who don't get that. There's no one around to bring them the poetry. So that's why I started writing. Someone has to bring it to them.
I heard you mention earlier that you had gone to see For Colored Girls at Temple University, I presume. This took place a couple of weeks ago. Pat and I also went to see it. Was that your first time seeing the play? And what was your experience as you sat there in the audience?
You know what? That was not my first time seeing the play, actually. But that was my first time seeing the play that way.
Okay, and what does that mean?
So Lee, the director, I believe his last name is Lee Richardson. I don't want to butcher it. So Lee Richardson, who directed it, this man is a mastermind, and the way that he had it set up was just the most raw, basic set that I didn't learn until later, because one of my friends was in the cast, that it was because they had so little money. And with this just very basic set, the emotion was so visceral and like so palpable throughout the production that it was hard to sit there. There was no, there wasn't then she walks over to the couch, or she sits here, she goes by the window. She's just sitting there telling her own story, and that's what made it so beautiful.
Yes.
And it was the words as much as it was the acting.
Yes.
Every part of the art came to play and came to life in that, and
Yes.
I think that it's incredible that it was not only written that way, but directed that way.
Right. Yeah.
It was unreal.
And Pat, can you talk about
My
your feeling when
seeing
we
this-
were there?
Yeah, seeing this production, what she said, but you said it so wonderfully.
Right.
But I actually have seen the production many times over the years and done different ways, and I appreciated this one so much because I was in the moment from the entire time that
Right.
the lights went down until they came back up. You're in this play.
Yes.
You're a part of these women's lives, and
Right.
and even though I've seen it before and I've read the book and I know about it, I left with something new. I left with something new seeing this
Right.
production, and it just, I mean, I cried a lot because I'm a crier. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm one of those people. I cried, I cried a lot, even during I was fighting back tears, and even when I got home and I couldn't stop talking about it. And my husband's like, well, okay, well, you know, all right, for a colored girl. I'm like, but you have to go. But that was my experience. It was just very moving, very profound, and it just brought so much to me just to actually see this production of it done by
Right,
Temple
right.
students.
While we're on that subject, and we're just having the dialogue that we're having, and you did mention your friend, and I pulled an article from the Temple newspaper with regard to the production. Your friend is quoted. I believe she's your friend, Imani Rothwell. Yeah. And she said, I wanted to be in this play especially because it's important during this time where black girls are often silenced. And I felt this was a way I can use my art and the platform of art to voice black girls and the things we go through. So before we go on, and I'm going to ask you to share one of Ntozoke Shange's poems. Also in the article, and I'd like you to speak to this because you both were there, we sat in the audience where there were very few colored girls.
Yes.
Talk about how that felt, and non-colored girls hearing our stories, how that felt to you sitting there,
You know what?
if anything.
That is something that has been sort of sitting on my heart since I went to see it. And it's not just that production. I've been in all types of artists, all types of audiences, and I've been on all types of stages where what's being exhibited is black artistry for a very specific group of people. And there have been rooms full of non-black faces. And at that point, I'm not sure if it's, because the function can be to inform.
Right.
It can be to invite you in, to let you know. But when you're a colored girl sitting there, then it's healing. The art serves a direct function, I think. So as I was sitting there in, you know, Temple's Randall Black Box Theater, one of the smallest venues they have for such an incredible show that's neither here nor there. As I was sitting there, I was thinking, well, how could we have gotten more colored girls to see this?
Right.
You know, what do we say to accessibility at that point? And, you know, who shoulders that? Who shoulders, you know, who we advertise this to? Because there's no shortage of black women in North Philadelphia. At Temple University, though,
At Temple University.
yes.
that's a different story.
Yes.
In Temple University's theater school, that's a different story.
Yeah, and it's something that Imani actually spoke to in the article. And Pat, your feeling.
And that was actually my feeling when I noticed that, is that because of what she said, the fact that it was Temple. So I'm assuming that it was Temple art students that were there, and it wasn't the accessibility. Like there's not a lot of African American students in the arts at Temple, and so maybe it wasn't marketed in North, you know, to the surrounding
To the
area.
community,
right?
maybe.
For one thing, I mean, like a lot of us heard about it. Like I on Facebook like everyone else is, and that's how I was able to find out about it. And so, like I do with all things, I share it, but
Right.
how to get them to come. Sharing is one thing, but how to get them to come was another thing. So I did notice that, but for me, I also, the way I felt about it, to have so many non-colored girls in the audience was, I felt good about it. I was like, and I felt good about it because of what the play was saying and how it pulled me in. So I knew, not just because of my experiences as a colored girl that it pulled me in, but as a woman, because as a woman, we all have shared experience.
Sure.
It doesn't matter what color we are.
Yeah.
This play will pull you into those experiences. And so
Yeah.
I felt that, okay, yeah, so the non-colored girls that are sitting in this audience, but who are girls, women,
Right.
are feeling and sharing some of the same things that I'm saying. So I like that aspect of it.
Okay.
I did.
Okay. Appreciate that commentary on that. I want to share a quote, two quotes actually, by Ntozoke Shange. I write for girls of color, for girls who don't even exist yet, so that there is nothing there for them when they arrive. I can only change how they live, not how they think. And another quote, she says, when I die, I will not be guilty of having left a generation of girls behind that anyone can tend to their emotional health other than themselves. So I'd like to ask you both. And before I ask you this, because this, you know, we are sharing, and of course Ntozoke Shange has shared, you know, an innermost feeling, an innermost expression. So I like to say that, and we're going to claim it, that this is a welcoming environment, that we're able to share and be open. And here we are, three women, three sisters, three women of color. And so we're just going to behave in such a way that we're comfortable, you know. Ntozoke Shange also speaks of being unsilenced, and this is what her work has done. So with that in mind, I'd like you to, each of you, to share one of Ntozoke Shange's poems, one that perhaps makes you think of self-empowerment, and just talk a little bit about it before you share, you know, the reason why you're sharing it. Go ahead, Pat.
I know, because you've been going that way. I'm like jumping in here.
You got it, you got it.
I'm actually going to read one of Ntozoke Shange's poems called With No Immediate Cause. And Deborah had asked us ahead of time to pick some of her poetry that we'd like to read. And so I just love everything that she does. And so I searched through everything, went on the web, went through my books, and this one popped out at me for several reasons. Number one, because of the content in it. Number two, because of what's happening this month. It's domestic violence
Awareness, yes.
month. And full disclosure, I was a victim of domestic violence. So was my mother. So was my sister. And I lost 2 friends to domestic violence. And so I told you I'm a crier. So this poem popped out to me to share for her. And I love it because what I love about Ntozoke, she's very raw, very raw. It's like the wounds are right there, they're open, but I love that. I love that she's exposing all of herself in her writing, and she's allowing us to come inside and heal with her. So this is With No Immediate Cause. Every 3 minutes, a woman is beaten. Every 5 minutes, a woman is raped. Every 10 minutes, a little girl is molested. Yet I rode the subway today. I sat next to an old man who may have beaten his old wife 3 minutes ago, or 3 days ago, 30 years ago. He might have sodomized his daughter, but I sat there because the young men on the train might beat some young woman later in the day or tomorrow. I might not shut my door fast every 3 minutes. It happens. Some woman's innocence rushes to her cheeks, pours from her mouth like the Betsy Wetsy dolls have been torn apart. Their mouths, minces red and split. Every 3 minutes, a shoulder is jammed through plaster and the oven door. Cheers pushed through the rib cage. Hot water or boiling sperm decorate her body. I rode the subway today, and brought a paper from a man who might have held his old lady onto a hot pressing iron. I don't know. Maybe he catches little girls in the park and rips open their behinds with steel rods. I can't decide what he might have done. I only know every 3 minutes, every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes. So I brought the paper looking for the announcement, the discovery of the dismembered woman's body. The victims have not all been identified. Today they are naked and dead, refuse to testify. 1 girl out of 10's not coherent. I took the coffee, excuse me, I gotta pull that apart, and spit it up. I found an announcement, not the woman's bloated body in the river, floating, not the child bleeding in the 59th Street corridor, not the baby broken on the floor. There is some concern that alleged battered women might start to murder their husbands and lovers with no immediate cause. I spit up, I vomit, I am screaming. We all have immediate cause. Every 3 minutes, every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, every day, women's bodies are found in alleys and bedrooms at the top of stairs. Before I ride the subway, buy a paper, drink coffee, I must know. Have you heard a woman today? Did you beat a woman today? Throw a child across the room? Are the little girl's panties in your pocket? Did you hurt a woman today? I have to ask these obscene questions. The authorities require me to establish immediate cause every 3 minutes, every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, every day.
My God.
That's a wow, and especially for your sharing, again, in this space, you know, that personal thing that happened to you and members of your family. And so I want to just ask, when you first read that poem, and even now, is that something that makes you recall, makes you remember, makes you glad that you are maybe able to say some of those words? Did you feel like saying some of those words?
It's two-sided. It's like it empowers me, but it
Yes.
also frightens me at the same time.
Yeah.
It's because it did happen to me. It did happen to people that I know, and it's still happening.
Yes.
It still happens. It empowers me that I can say it, that you can open your mouth and talk about it. And this is
Right.
what I love about poetry or the arts. The arts give you the access to say things that society otherwise won't listen to.
Right,
So
right.
that the first time reading it was very emotional. At first, I just read it over and over and over
Yes.
and over again. That how does she know? How can she say all of these things that I should have been saying, but now I can because she
Yes.
gave me permission to say them.
Right, right. Miriam, yes.
Yeah. Just on that note, very quickly, I think that it's important to note that it's still happening.
Yeah,
You know,
Right.
it's
Absolutely.
because it's really easy for those who aren't survivors and those who haven't been directly affected to read the poems and see the play and then just go home and leave it there. And that's why I think the work is so important,
Yes.
especially for the people that she writes for. But as far as a work of hers that I want to share, this is actually a page from her book Sassafras, Cypress, and Indigo, which is my favorite book.
Right there, so I'm beat up. You can tell I just read.
I love this book. And this book is really important to me because it speaks a lot about sort of, one, it uses an incredible amount of magical realism, which, if we're talking nerd stuff,
Yes.
that's my thing. Love magical realism in fiction, but it speaks to the imagination of the Black girl, and not only the Black girl's imagination, but the Black girl's ability to create for herself. And when we talk about things like violence and the things that we go through and the ways in which we are dying and the ways in which we're being targeted, I think it is paramount for us to be able to create for ourselves.
Yes.
That's right.
Because people are constantly tearing us down. We have to be able to build for ourselves. So Sassafras, Cypress, and Indigo, I would suggest it. It's my go-to
read.
book. Here we go. And this is just from a page in it. It's journal entry 692. What does it mean that Black folks could sing and dance? Why do we say that so much? We don't know what we mean. I saw what that means. Good God, did I see. Like, I could have walked on water myself. I could have clothed the naked and fed the hungry with what I dance. I saw tonight. I don't mean dance. I mean a closer walk with thee. A race through swamps that fall off in space. I mean, I saw the black people move the ground and set the bars beneath their feet. So what's this mean that black folks could dance? Well, how about a woman like Diane Harvey, who can make her body the night riders in the runways, the children hanging on their mama dress, while they fathers beat to death? The blood from the man's wounds, his woman's tears, the night riders going off in the darkness, the silence of the night. How about Bernadine J., whose body was all that in 5 minutes, and whose very presence humbled all but the drum? Now that's a dance. Like Rael Lamb careening across the stage on his bare stomach. 50 feet sounds like possums and rattlesnakes, Mississippi undercurrents and steaming hog maws, tossing him up from Decatur to South Texas. Tearing him from contraction to leap so expansive, his body took the space allowed 30 redwood trees, and those sounds kept pushing him. Little racing motors like the cops was round the bend. Windows open and shut, 'cause there are things others ought not to hear. Feet on stairways of burned out homes, the sounds pushed him, and there was a dance that was a black dance. That's what it meant that black folks could dance. It don't mean we got rhythm. It don't mean the slop or the hully gully or this dance in Houston called the white boy. It don't mean just what we do all the time. It's how we remember what cannot be said. That's what the white folks say, it ain't got no form. That was the form of slavery. That was the form of Jim Crow. And how would they know?
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Who do we love?
Ntozoke Shange.
Shange. I want to read another excerpt from her book, from an essay called The Couch. I saw things. I was not delusional or schizophrenic. I apparently could reach areas of my unconscious as a child that never left me, which turned out to be as much a burden as a blessing. I had visions. I wasn't playing. I wasn't laying on the grass or upside a great tree, listening and seeing historical figures, artists, people I didn't know dancing with me, taking me to salons in Paris or a roadhouse in Alabama. I was daydreaming, I imagine, but I never diminished those episodes to anything less than my real life. That's why journalists have such a hard time fact-checking stories on or about me. I will give them an anecdote which is impossible to chart in any methodology. They ask me, did something happen? And I'll probably say yes, because I remember my dreams, both night and day, as authentically as I experienced my daily life. Before I started ministrating, this issue of truth was very much alive. What I believed or felt, I could not prove to anybody in a reasoned fashion. That's why I knew instinctively that I could not argue or debate at a certain point. I knew my truth was simply mine and not collectively recognized reality. Yet it could not be a lie because I felt it. The only place I know where anybody else believes this is the psychoanalyst's office. There it is enough, to paraphrase Marie Cardinal, to find the words to say it. So I'd like to pause for a moment and give you all and the audience an opportunity to be on the couch. You are on the couch, and I'd like you to be able to share one of your own poems about a woman of color, or about, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about a woman of color, but about the things that maybe a girl, a woman would experience in a moment. Yes? In a moment? Oh, okay. All right. Well, we don't have, I'll share one of mine. I don't have it written down, so please bear with me. This poem, and I guess it's sort of reminiscent of, I think about for colored girls when I wrote this poem, because I was in a poetry writing workshop, and the instructor asked us to have a reflection on about what was going on in the workshop. And there were all women there, and I had met different women, and one of them got up and said that she had been a sculptor and married, divorced, and just introducing herself and the various stages of her life. And then she said, and now I'm on my 13th life. And that struck me so heavily. Like, what does that mean for a woman to go through these lives? And so the assignment was to go home and write a poem based on the experience in the class. So I wrote this poem. I began my first life by being birthed from a womb, weighted with wounds, which some say may cause me to remember, to forget. I'm sorry, let me start over. I began my first life being birthed from a womb, weighted with wounds, which some say may cause me to forget, to remember reminders of my most memorable self. But I do remember. I remember that quickly I strutted to phase 2. It was the phase in which I wore some wicked wear to test my wiles on a soon-to-be husband, whom I humped to stage 3 on Wednesday nights before work wore him down and out. The 4th found me belching out babies, 4 before controlled birth failed, before reaching my quarter century, a sometimes hard pill to swallow. Yet I survived the 5th dimension with the 6th sense that family was forever. I rewarded them. They rewarded me with love lessons learned. Therefore, 7th heaven lasted long until they left me. I left me like an 8 ball on the edge of a corner pocket. So in the 9th inning, I milked men for making me mad enough that tears tightened around my neck. Then I counted to 10, backwards, seeking self until the imprints left footprints facing forward. I slow walked to 11, gained strength to run through 12, and now I'm on my 13th life. Those love lessons will let me live this life less labored. I'm blessed to be born again.
Ashe.
Ashe, amen and ashe.
Are we still on the couch?
Yes. Let us
Well,
be on the couch.
I like to share a poem that like many women, I have many levels. So I'm a mother, a grandmother, an aunt, a sister, all of that. And so I have a lot of young ladies in my family. My daughters are grown now, but I have a lot of teenage nieces. And so I wrote this poem because I see that they're moving so fast. They're like, everything I need, I got to move it. And so this was sort of my experience, and then to try to tell them that you don't have to do things so quick. So it's entitled, When the Bell Rings. I was destined to be late for something. Mama said she was 3 weeks late before she realized that I was waiting in her womb. Then the doctors told her that I wasn't growing on time, which of course is a form of lateness. And wouldn't you know it, when it came time for me to greet this universe, I was late. But Mama didn't mind so much because by then she had grew accustomed to waiting on me. She said I was her tomorrow, and everybody knows tomorrows are always on time. Once I come, though, never wanting to be last, she said I grew like gone yesterdays, too soon and too fast. Said I jumped from the crib to the curb just in time to stand in line for a crayon and cotton candy. Little girl's joys of Jackson jump rope gave her hope that I would wait, but waiting made you late. So I ran fast, tripping over toddlerhood only to fall flat on my adolescence. Bubblegum bubbles and easy bake ovens began to bore me. Soon double dutch and hopscotch couldn't tag me. I wanted boys to spin the bottle so I could hide and let them seek me. And they did. Wasn't long before one of them said, "You're it." And I was. Then giggly girlfriend games like Miss Mary Mac, all dressed in black, with silver buttons, all down her back, no longer related to me. Hula hoops and hipsters wouldn't fit around my waist anymore, and playing house wasn't just for play. Soon, school days made me dizzy with the ringing of all those bells, the senior class trip bells, the prom bells, the graduation bells, bells that I never got to hear, but they kept ringing in my ears just the same, and the ringing made me late. too late for the past while lingering lost in this present, yet still waiting for better beginnings. Now when my own children chase tomorrow, running way too fast beyond their yesterdays, I grab a hold of their hearts and I tell them to wait, baby, wait, please, wait.
Thank you for sharing that. Miriam.
It's like a theme of time passing.
Yes.
I like it. Well, I'm almost the inverse. I am not a mother or a grandmother, but I'm a daughter
Yes.
and a granddaughter. So I wrote this poem about the women in my family and sort of how we pass through different phases and generations. My grandmother told me to never fall in love, that men were vultures with sleepy eyes and whiskey breath waiting in dark corners to beat the spark out of me, that if I let men love me, they'd swallow me whole, that if I let them, they'd turn me into the same warning sign they made her, how husband number one refused to stay by her side, quick to abandon 4 children, bellies filled with toxic air. The day she let him go, waving goodbye was as easy as exhaling. Husband number 2 beat her into a shrine for all those who left, a rusted hinge with 3 generations of trauma hanging on her. Love was dark matter and mercury. Love was a risk I was better off not taking. Love never wiped the dew from my eyes, so I was not taught to share the bed. I was raised by fire women. Burn victims who let love corrode them from the inside out and spoke of men like intruders that gnawed at bone. Warned me to keep my armor ready for when the soldiers came, so I've been building a brick-like resolve since birth. I will never let men love me if I can't fit all of me into the arms of some careless man who is waiting for the right cliff to lose his grip on. And I'd never let a man drop me until I met the first to try, him. With his hands calloused and his words sharp enough to reduce the house of my body into firewood. Shrink down, girl. No one should know the edifice that you are. No one should know you blood and bone, only flesh and curve, only the softness that makes this facade a fine bedmate. There have been nights where the gravity of lonely weighed so heavy on my chest, I felt myself tearing. I let men rip me apart to prove my skin was soft enough to transcend texture, but thick enough to bond again after they left. Let them rest their hot coals on my back and thought to be grateful for the warmth. I ache for the sensation of being torn in two. My resolve is malleable as moist clay. I want to be something worth sinking into more than I want to be someone worth standing beside. I look at my grandmother and I see something unconquerable. She's beautiful the way funeral pyres are, how she's so bright, a demanding and glorious flame that nothing survives. I think I too could blaze that way. Women like us aren't easy to love, and we love proving it. Women like us are both home and hurricane. Our words don't sit neatly, our baggage don't sit neatly, and we cut into ourselves because we bruise real pretty. We hold the door open upon exit. We are justifiable abandonment. And we've been practicing for the breaking. We've been building since birth.
Wow. Yes, we could do that, right? And I heard firewoman, and you told me earlier today that you were a member of a collective.
Yes.
So before we had that conversation, I want both of you to talk about how you engage the community with your poetry. So I'd like you to share first and tell us about the name of your group.
Okay, well, if we're talking about engaging the community, I'm part of a few groups.
Of course you are.
Oh God, but the one,
Right.
That's what we do.
the one though that I think is most relevant is a collective called BAD, Black and Defiant Womanists. And the Bad Womanist Collective basically is me and a few other early 20-something young women who sort of seek to create safe spaces for other Black women. So what we do, and it's actually, it was inspired sort of by Ntozoke Shange. Last January, I was taking a course called Women Writers in Black Literature with Dr. Regina Jennings.
Oh.
Oh, you.
We really stalked her.
She's the love of my life.
goodness.
Wow.
What
All
just
of this
happened?
is because of her.
Yes, yes.
Go on, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And then
Yep.
we'll share our story about that.
I was taking women writers in Black literature with Regina Jennings, and that's where we read Sassafras, Cypress, and Indigo. And the first page really is about Black women in the moon. Where there's a woman, there is magic. If there's a moon falling from her mouth.
Right. Yes.
And we had just learned, she had just taught us about Seshat, the goddess Seshat, who is the ancient Kemetan Egyptian, African goddess of both literature and sort of astronomy and the moon. And we had just learned about Black women's connection to the moon and how it has always been essential for us as Black women as a way to sort of heal and to revive and to feed ourselves and to feed and provide for others. So I was just getting all into this moon stuff, doing all this research, and that January when there was a full moon, I was joking at first talking to a friend. I was like, no, you don't know the full moon's coming up. Oh, I'm about to be Black Girl Magic. I'm going to be in the living room with an Ntozoke Shange book and some shea butter. And she's like, no, how about we really do that?
Yes.
Right.
So what we started was the Full Moon Party, which is a party that we have once every quarter. So we have one for spring, summer, fall, and winter. And basically what happens is we invite as many Black women as we can find to someone, typically my backyard. And what we do is we sort of start off with a discussion to sort of say, checking in, where are you, sis? Like, how are you, sis? Let's talk about these things, microaggressions, anything that you have that you need to let go of. And then we do this, we do what we call a ritual, and I'm going to stand by my made-up rituals. I have a whole theory on that if we have time. We do a made-up ritual where we write something on a piece of paper that we want to let go of. We talk about it. We put it all into a big bowl, pour red wine on it, because red's an important color.
Yes.
And then we recite the first page of Sassafras, Cypress, and Indigo, where there's a woman, there is magic, and light it on fire under the full moon.
Wow.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So
We will
where's the
expect.
list?
We'll expect
that we
I
write.
was
No, we're
good.
gonna-
I was
If you-
right there with you.
If you want to be a part of it and you have any form of social media, we're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all at Bad Womanists.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
it happens.
Yes.
Well, the full moon parties happen once every 3 months, but we have different programming. We're planning walks and other sort of discussions and things like that. So I would say keep up with us.
Yeah.
Bad Womanists,
Yeah.
Black and Defiant.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
And of course, Pat, I know that you're involved with the community, but I would like you to share the story of our meeting and the connection to Regina Jennings. And if you could do that quickly, and then we're going to go into our open mic.
I will. Deb and I met. Regina Jennings was teaching a poetry called New Black Voices.
New Black Voices.
At Temple University as part of the Pass Up program. And it was the title alone that made me want to go be a part of it. So I'm like, I'm Black and I have a voice. I just read Ntozoke Shange. I got Sonia Sanchez, and I must be heard. And so I went to the class and signed up. And Deborah and I really didn't know each other then. Regina, our teacher, entered us into a contest, and without us knowing it. We didn't know that our poems were entered in the contest, and we won first and second prize.
Wow.
It was the Sonia Sanchez, Audre Lorde, Bema contest. And we won first and second prize, and they had this big conference, and all we got a chance to meet Sonia, who we have quietly been stalking ever since, but that's another program. And from there, from us winning that contest, Deborah and I have been friends ever since.
Right.
And that's really how we came to know each other. Like, hey,
Yeah.
you're one.
Yes.
And so she really brought us together. But just to say briefly about Dr. Jennings, I took her class before Deborah came. I had taken her class like 4 times. I was stalking her before I started stalking Sonia because she was an amazing teacher. All the things that I was reading about through like with Ntozoke and all, Regina was saying it. She was
Yes.
like, do it, speak your mind, do this. You must. Your voice has a meaning and has power, and you can use it. And she taught that in her classes
Right.
at PASSEP. And when she left, she sort of pulled us in to take over teaching her class.
Right.
That's how much she had grown,
Right,
confident in
right.
us, and how much we had learned from her and continue to learn from her. So yes, I love her. So when you said her name, I'm like, Regina. It's okay.
Yeah,
Love
that's that
what
6
that means.
degrees thing,
Yes,
how
she's
we
an
how we
amazing
are
sister.
connected.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
No,
how
that's
things are
very-
cyclical.
Yes,
for Black
absolutely.
people.
Yes.
That's what that is.
Yes.
We're going to go to the open mic section now. Please welcome Jazz to the mic.
Welcome, Jazz.
Welcome, Jazz. I might add that Jazz is a member of my collective called 4 Women Collective.
Love you.
Hello, everyone. So, this is an honor to pick one of Miss Shange's favorites, and a favorite of mine, and this is called Sorry. One thing I don't need is any more apologies. I got sorry greeting me at my front door. You can keep yours. I don't know what to do with them. They don't open doors or bring sun back. They don't make me happy or get a morning paper. Didn't nobody stop using my tears to wash cars 'cause of sorry. I am simply tired of collecting. I didn't know I was so important to you. I'm going to have to throw some away. I can't get to the clothes in my closet for all the sorries. I'm going to tack a sign to my door, leave a message by the phone. If you call to say you're sorry, call somebody else. I don't use them anymore. I let sorry, didn't mean to, and how could I know about that? Take a walk down a dark and musty street in Brooklyn. I'm going to do exactly what I want to, and I won't be sorry for none of it. Let a sorry soothe your soul. I'm going to soothe mine. You are always inconsistent, doing something and then being sorry. Beating my heart to death, talking about you sorry. Well, I will not call. I'm not going to be nice. I will raise my voice and scream and holler and break things and race the engine and tell all your secrets about yourself to your face. And I will list in detail every one of my wonderful lovers and their ways. I will play Oliver Lake loud, and I won't be sorry for none of it. I loved you on purpose. I was open on purpose. I still crave vulnerability and close talk, and I'm not even sorry about you being sorry. You can carry all the guilt and grime you wanna, just don't give it to me. I can't use another sorry. Next time, you should admit you're mean, low down, trifling, and no count straight out. Instead of being sorry all the time, enjoy being yourself. And this is one of my pieces called Whole. I am not your game, your challenge, your puzzle, your erection, your trophy, your itch, your bed, nor your morning after. I'm not your temporary, your arm candy, your filler, your release. I'm not your bragging rights. I am not your whole. I'm not your phone number on the bathroom wall. I'm not your cause, your effect, your purpose, your submission, your obsession, your smut, your leftovers. I'm not your prey, not your conquered. I'm not your fulfillment, your rhapsody, your savior. I am not your therapy. I'm not your hangout corner, your bank deposit box. I'm not a place where you can bury your secrets. Not your trash bag, your collection plate, nor your sugar jar. I am your rib that you keep breaking. I am your gristle. I am your spirit ache. I am the reminder of your hole that only God can fill. Thank you.
Then I'm going to ask Pat, and if you don't mind, if you would actually go to the mic, if you would share one of yours as well as another one of Ntozake Shange's. Yes. I'm sorry? Oh, you're wired. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, be right here.
Okay. Sit right there.
Ooh, I like
Be
that.
comfortable.
I'm wired.
Yes.
Okay. For Ntozake Shange, I will read Resurrection of the Daughter. The family had been ill for some time, quarantined, socially restricted to bridge and Sunday brunch by the pool. The mother called her daughters twice a day. She saved the son for emergencies. The father drove around a lot. There were no visible cars. Under the daughters' bibber eyes lay pain like Rachel's, the rage of Zelda, daffodils, pirouettes, and status. The daughters' CDs set a formal table, courtesy if no descendants of slaves, and speak English with no accent at all. They were virgins for a long time. One was a punishment for a month because she closed her eyes while dancing on the wrong side of town. Mama, who came from there, knew too well a cheap pleasure CD smell remorse. I'm sorry, a cheap pleasure could smell remorse for an upwardly mobile girl, and the girl learned well. She paid for her lovers with her suffering, never knowing some love is due you. She waved her tears in her lover's face. The more there were, the more they were worth. The son looked down on those things. His woman did his laundry and his cooking, but they were not crying. The father was also not crying. He was with ulcers and waited on the cliffs where his daughter's lovers played for his demise, dying to be the heads of a sick household. The lovers of the daughters wrought pain, deception, and fear wherever they turned, and the son kept his distance. This should have been kept, but that's a typo. The son kept his distance. The mother called him in emergencies, recurred all the time. The daughters believed they were ugly, dumb, and dark, like haze, like mud, like beetles and filth. The mother washed all the time and kept her kitchen clean. The father wore perfumes, thought sex a personal decision. A daughter convinced her beauty an aberration, her love a fungus, her womb a fantasy. Loft asylum of her home on a hinge. She would find someone who could survive tenderness. She would feed someone who was in need of her fruits. She would gather herself an El Dorado of her own making, a space empty of envy, of hate. She, a daughter, refused to answer her mother's calls. She refused to believe in the enmity of her sisters. The brother was caught to see the emergency. The father brought a new stereo, and she was last seen in the arms of herself, blushing, having come to herself in the heat of herself. Daughters wait for the wounded to scream themselves to death. Daughters choosing to be women lick their wounds with their own spit till they heal.
Wow. Thank you. And before you read one in the interest of time, Miriam, would you like to share another one?
Sure.
Thank you.
This is one of my own poems.
Okay.
It's called If It's Your First Time with a Black Girl.
Oh, how appropriate is that?
If it's your first time with a black girl, and you like the way she scratches but not the way she speaks, Consider the occasions upon which her nails have met her own throat. If it's your first time with a black girl and you don't like her sharp tongue, consider how one learns their native language. If it's your first time with a black girl and her hair looks soft and luring, do not touch it. We are as dangerous as you have heard. If it's your first time with a black girl and she cannot stop bringing up race, consider someone who had come so close to drowning and ask why they would be taught to swim. If it's your first time with a black girl and you feel yourself lying to her when you call her beautiful, stop. Would you walk into someone else's home and rearrange all the furniture? If it's your first time with a black girl and you're wondering where she got her rhythm from, consider the last time you ran a race and recall and recall and recall.
Yes, ma'am. Nice. And one more time, Pat, and then we'll have you close out.
And this is one of my own, it's incessant memories. Sometimes I sit old with my youth held captive by a too eventful past as I try to unremember violations, confrontations, and separations caused by your frequent and always unwelcome invasions into my girl child, never to reach adolescent virginity. Your penetration stole smiles, damaged dreams, and left visions vanished, visions of veils and flowers and pure white dresses. I fight to forget images of my family of which you too were a part, images of embarrassed eyes enveloped in anguish and hurt and fear of not knowing if they were more afraid of what happened to me or to you, fear of not knowing if they were more afraid of not knowing what happened to me or to you, eyes that tried to look and see me still as their little girl, but never being quite able to do it. And often after only hours, never days, never weeks or years of making myself not remember the pain, not relive the horror, not still feel the shame of your touch, I still sometimes cringe in contempt, not of you, but of myself. Even now, and after all the years of family and friends and therapy and even God telling me that it wasn't my fault, I still feel flashes of guilt. Did I hug you too much? Did I kiss you too much? Did my calling out to you in the middle of the night because I was afraid of the dark mean that you should come inside of me and tear up everything that I saw beautiful in you and in myself? Even now, and as I sit old, the little girl inside of me, never allowed to welcome womanhood, weeps in the corner of my thoughts. And I wonder still, did I love you too much, Daddy? Did I love you too much?
Wow.
Wow.
I think we're going to go to Miriam, if you have a short one to share.
It's actually very short.
Thank you. Yeah, and then we're going to go and have Larry say some last words for us.
All right. This one's called Rebellion Song. Today we marched a funeral procession down Market Street. We're all black, carried cardboard caskets, sang the name of slain black children whose names we wrote into a funeral song. And the verse changed with each thud, another body dropping somewhere in middle America. And we do not celebrate the cars that stopped when before this moment they had been dreaming us dead. And when my brown body finally finds its roots in enemy soil, there will be someone who has written my name into a rebellion song. I will know my mother was a composer. All black women are.
Yes, indeed. And with that, thank you, Miriam Harris. Thank you, Pat McLean. And of course, thank you, Ntozoke, Shange,
and Deborah Powell Wright.
Thank you.